Well, hi, I'm Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this YouTube channel. We appreciate you every single time you come on, and it's just a blessing to be able to share our life and our journey and our truth with you. We want to make sure we connect with you, and of course, we always encourage each person who's watching to make sure that you like, that you comment, and certainly subscribe to this channel. And we hope that you'll share with as many folks as you can. Of course, I want you to follow my wife, Dr. Steph, out there, Dr. Steph Walker on Instagram. Follow me, Joseph Walker 3 right here. We want to just stay connected to you, and we appreciate the opportunity to do just that. Well, today we've got a topic we got to breathe to talk about, because it is such a personal topic, but we committed ourselves. And we committed ourselves to this YouTube space of being very transparent. And so we know that this topic is for many a difficult subject, for some who are on the journey right now experiencing setbacks, or perhaps the joy of child birth and all of that. We want to talk about our journey. This is like our journey and our truth for real. Our IVF journey, and maybe you may not know what IVF is, so I'm going to lean on the doctor to kind of explain to you what IVF means so that we can back into it and talk about our journey.
So IVF just stands for in vitro fertilization. So it's one of a number of avenues for assisted reproductive therapy. And so for many couples here in the US and around the world, getting pregnant isn't easy, right? And so like 1 out of every 5 couples have difficulty getting pregnant after a year. So after 1 year of trying, you're still not pregnant. That's like 20% of the US. And so just think, you go to a big football game and that's like almost a quarter of the stadium. You go to church, that's like the whole balcony. You go to a party, that's like, 1 every 5 seats of individuals in the room. So frequently this journey feels like you're on it alone and by yourself, and like there's something wrong with you or wrong with your spouse, and you just feel isolated. But the reality is you're not alone, and it's not just you. But it doesn't always feel that way.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And I think that if we put these in particular seasons or spaces for you to understand our journey, I think the first is, going through that season of, when your hopes are dashed. You get it? Like you have hopes, and then you're like...
And you have these certain expectations. Oh, this is going to be easy. Oh, we just got married. Yay. And we actually made the decision that we were not trying to get pregnant immediately, right? Like we weren't not trying to get pregnant. Hint, hint. But we just weren't like pushing for that goal. We wanted to get to know each other first and get to know each other better as a married couple. And then our goals were, okay, now we can start a family. Well, when our goals were, let's start a family, it didn't happen. It didn't happen right away. It actually didn't happen for a while.
And so it's like, how do you manage that season when your hopes are dashed? And for us, it was difficult because it was one of those seasons where, internally, for me, I was like, okay, what's going on with me?
We both come from really big families.
Big families, and a lot of reproduction going on in those families. And so, I'm not necessarily thinking about it in terms of medically initially. I'm thinking like, okay, maybe I'm not trying hard enough, or maybe something's going on, and you kind of go internally into this blame game. You go into this thing of not sharing a blame with the person, but just thinking through it, like maybe it's me, maybe it's her, and you're just frustrated, and you're
mental
like
interrogation.
That mental interrogation. And I think that it's something that you really have to work through that season and manage that season, because it's very real, and you have expectations for children. You want to be pregnant. You want it so bad.
And I think the hardest part for me in the beginning, before we start talking about what actually happened through our IVF journey, was just like the good intentions of people. So of course, when you're newlyweds, what's everyone telling you? When y'all gonna have a baby? And then people are coming up with their own ideas. Well, if you need me to teach you how to have a baby, I can teach you how to have a baby, ha, ha, ha. Not understanding like the private struggle that you're having. And then of course, frequently you're around other people who are in the same age group or process in their marriage, and they're getting pregnant and they're having good news, and you're going to baby showers. And in the beginning, that's fine. Everyone's happy. Yeah. Congratulations, honey. Yeah. Because you're like, I'm next. I'm coming soon. And then when it doesn't happen, eventually all those happy pregnancy announcements, you become happy on the outside, but it's tearing you apart on the inside. It's not that you're not happy for the other people, but eventually you're like, okay, hi, oh my gosh, great job, yeah, congratulations, I can't wait. And on the inside, like, you're crying and you're going home and you're like, okay, Lord, what about us? What did we do? You start to internalize it. At first you're blaming, right? You're like, well, what's wrong with you? What's wrong with us? We need to try harder. And then eventually you're like, okay, is it something that we did?
Yeah, because you have to go through that, right? You start thinking, am I being cursed? Is this something, God's punishing me for my past deeds? And you have to work through that mental and spiritual interrogation, because the enemy will use this as an opportunity to place that shame on you and that guilt. And then you have to pivot, and you really have to. And I think this is important once you come out of that, when hopes are dashed, and managing that, to really have the tough conversation. And for us, one of our strengths is conversation, communication. And so we really had a conversation about, okay, this path is not working, right? So what are our options? And this is when you have that tough conversation. And honestly, I had to work through the issue of, does this emasculate me? Getting through, am I not man enough? Do I need help or assistance to do this? And she was very helpful in helping me understand, again, that this is really what many couples deal with. And I think we have to, particularly as men, get past that issue of our masculinity, and maybe we're not good enough, but recognize that tons of couples seek help and assistance in helping them get pregnant. And so that's kind of where our journey began, with a conversation about options.
Yeah. I mean, so there's obviously numerous options, from, just taking certain medications that help your ovaries stimulate and you have more eggs, so then you have more options for pregnancies, to, assisted devices helping you get pregnant with those eggs or embryos, to actually what we ended up ultimately doing after we tried all those other things, which is in vitro fertilization, where they literally take the egg and take the sperm and put them together in a petri dish and watch it fertilize and figure out which ones are actually going to fertilize. And based on which ones actually do well and look healthy, then they turn around and actually put it back inside of the woman. And that's how we got our beautiful baby number one. And so, but it wasn't that easy.
Wasn't that easy? No.
There were many failures up to that point.
And let's talk about that, because that's painful, but it's so necessary for couples, right? Because when you do that, you're thinking, okay, we've tried this way, it's not working. And so now we go down this journey, and then we go through this process. And let me just tell you, this is what, for me as a husband, was very difficult, because a part of that process is, the petri dish, getting to that point. Once that's done, then there's this stimulation part. There's this part where I'm having to give her shots.
So I'm sitting here with these lashes on, hoping these lashes don't melt off, because I'm getting ready to cry.
I mean, this is real.
To keep it
this is the real. There's a season of watching, like, the doctors tell you, you have to go in this spot, and her having to literally mark the spot.
And what he's referring to is, part of the process isn't just you go to the doctor and they magically make you have a baby, right? It's hormone injections. It's various procedures. Like, I took to back up our journey, we have 2 beautiful children. But to get those 2 beautiful children, we went through 7 cycles of IVF. 7 cycles of IVF.
Process that.
I went through at least 12 surgical procedures where I was put to sleep for one reason or the other. I probably had 1,000, 2,000 shots in my buttocks or in my abdomen, or both combined. Sometimes he was available to give me my shots. Sometimes I had to give them to myself. Sometimes he was traveling, but the process rolls on. I mean, we traveled. So our first couple of IVF cycles were here locally, and we were actually successful after a couple of tries. Again, like I said, with our first daughter. But subsequently, we thought, after she was born, okay, this is going to be easy. We'll just do IVF again. Fast forward, she was 1 year old. We tried again. And unfortunately, yes, we got pregnant, but I had a miscarriage at 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And then we had...
And that was tough. Let's just pause. That was tough, right? Because that was that moment, when after you have a conversation, that's that moment you really have to recognize that, that this is really always in God's hand.
That's what I was going to just say. Took the words out of my mouth.
Always.
A God's thing.
It's a God thing. It's not medicine. It's not you. It's God thing. And when you watch that, you do all these different things, and then
you're like, I did everything right. The doctor said there's no reason that we shouldn't be pregnant, and and everything's right. And some people criticize assisted reproductive therapy or IVF, saying, well, that's not of God. At the end of the day, if it's going to happen, God's got to do it.
Period.
He's going to say yes
or no,
or he's going to say no.
Yeah.
So whatever avenue you take, God still has the final say. That's like saying, oh, I'm having a heart attack. I'm not going to go to the cardiologist to have my triple bypass surgery, because if God wanted to save me, he would do it right here on the spot.
Yeah.
God has given people skill sets.
That's right.
In order to be helpful. This is their ministry to the world, right? And so to have that mindset that you can't go get help, I think is erroneous. And I think as Christians, as Black community, as the nation, we have to destigmatize getting help, getting pregnant. It's many of us are waiting until we're older to get pregnant. And so that in and of itself, has its own sort of issues. Many of us are just making different decisions and prioritizing other things. And so at the end of the day, the rates of IVF use are going up. The rates of in vitro fertilization, babies, infants, families are going up. And the reality is, you're not alone. Yeah. This is not a conversation that you have to have in isolation. Once I started opening up, hundreds, if not thousands of people started to DM me in social media saying that's my story too. And the whole time I thought I was alone.
Yeah. And that's it, right? You are not alone.
Yeah.
This is something that a lot of people experience. A lot of people experience those moments of setback, those miscarriages, and you don't know what to do with that. And you're thinking like we've done all we can do. And I've prayed over people that have experienced that without them knowing that we had gone through it.
And it's okay to be, I know for me, like I was angry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I couldn't understand why.
Yeah.
Why us? Why me? But in the midst of it all, God is still a good God.
Yeah.
And I knew that he was faithful. I knew the promises that he had for us and for our family.
Yeah.
And I just remained prayerful in the process. And, some people say, oh my gosh, 7 cycles of IVF, I would have quit. Well, at some point we did. At some point we were just like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And, I just promised myself that I would just remain prayerful and figure out what God's plan was for our family.
And that's what I was getting at, God's plan. Like, how do you now come to a point where you seek God's plan?
Yeah.
Like, because we always think about our family plan.
Yeah.
But what is God's plan? And we could have given up. We could have said, we've got one daughter. We thank God. But we knew what God had promised us, right?
Yeah. I told myself that I would just remain prayerful. And the moment that God said stop, I would stop. And the moment that God said keep going, we would keep going. And until I got that confirmation that no, don't do it, that's what we were waiting on. I never got that confirmation until the very end after I had my son, And so, we went from having therapies locally to pausing to actually going to Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Because, again, I believe in prayer. And in our prayer, God was like, check out Denver. And I was like, Denver, what? And when I looked it up, they had the #1 IVF center in the world.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, Lord, I'm walking out on faith. And so there were many weeks that people didn't see me and they couldn't figure out why I wasn't going to church. Because I was living in Denver, And when that didn't work, I was like, okay, Lord, maybe I missed you. Well, he sent me home. And then we gave it a pause. And then, we had another prayer cycle, what have you. And he was like, just go home. And home meant try here again. And we did. And lo and behold, you know, it's interesting because you see all the dots connect. We learned so much when we went to Denver about the process and what we needed and what we needed to do and where we needed to go. And I had procedures out there surgical procedures that corrected some of the things that were going on with my womb, with my uterus. And so we did need to go to Denver, but not for the reason that I thought. And so then we came back to Nashville and had another cycle locally, and boom, we had our son. But no, it wasn't easy. No, yes, it was definitely a journey. Yes, we've had multiple miscarriages. That was just one that we talked about. And the reality is, it's not just us. And that's why we just felt it was important to have this conversation, because we know that there are people out there that are going through the same exact thing right now. It's not just you. And just continue to have faith. God is good. If he made that promise to you, he will, you know, uphold that promise to you. Just continue to push forward, open up to the people that you feel like you can trust. Feel free to DM me. There are so many people around you that are going through the same thing, and I don't want you to have to feel the same things that I felt and feel like you're alone.
And we really want to share this story because we want to encourage you in this journey, right? Because again, you're not by yourself, and I know there's a lot of different, you know, emotions. There's a lot of different spiritual things you work through. I know I struggle with the spiritual, and I'm a pastor. It's really okay. That's a part of the journey.
It's okay to have questions. It's okay to say, why me, God? Why is this happening to me? It's okay to be angry. It's okay to get frustrated. But when you get through with that, you have to center. You have to center and remain prayerful and remain faithful, because God is such a good God.
One of the things that kept us, as that text Solomon writes in Proverbs, trust in the Lord with all of your heart, lean not to your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path to Denver and back to Nashville, and boom.
And sometimes, though, let's be real, sometimes God directs your path elsewhere. Sometimes God will tell you no. Sometimes God will say enough is enough. Let's go another route. And sometimes you don't want to hear it, and sometimes you're ready for it, right? And sometimes that other route for people could lead to adoption, could lead to foster care, could lead to other avenues. And guess what? Those are also beautiful options too. It just depends on what's right for you and what's right for your family. I have 4 adopted beautiful nieces. I have 3 adopted brothers. And so all of those options came up actually in our conversation about family and family planning. And so, not to say that we were ready and gung-ho with any of these options. No one wants to stick 1,000 needles in their abdomen in order to have a baby. You just want to do, get pregnant, and say hallelujah and pop out a baby. Like, everyone thinks that it's that easy, but it's not. It's not always that easy for everyone. And so the reality is being able to be honest with your spouse, having open lines of communication, trusting God in the process, knowing that you're not alone, preparing yourself mentally, spiritually, physically for this journey, because it truly is a journey. You can do it. You know, you can do it. There is nothing wrong with you. It is not you. It is not a curse. There is nothing that God is not punishing you.
It's not. It's certainly not.
It's just par for the course. Sometimes it happens easily for people. Sometimes it doesn't.
One of the things I will say as we wrap this up is I've often, you know, tried to work through the why of God. I ask God, why? And one of the things that comes back to me frequently is, can God trust you with trouble?
Jesus.
And the fact is, God could trust us. And the reason we know that is because here we are using our story transparently to bless you. That our journey is about encouraging someone else, that God didn't bring us through this to just act like it didn't happen. But it's to tell the truth and the story so that you will be encouraged, that you will trust God, that you won't go off the deep end, that it will strengthen your relationship, and you will know that what God did with us, he could do with you, or that you could examine various options and know the plan of God for your life will always come to fruition. And maybe aligning your plan with God's plan is ultimately what the plan should be. I really hope this has blessed you. It has been perhaps one of the most emotional ones we've done, but it's real. And that's why we did this. We wanted to just keep it 100. And let us know what you think. Why don't you comment if you have questions for us? You want to DM either of us? Do it. Dr. Steph Walker, Joseph Walker 3 will respond. If you want, maybe to talk to us, maybe as a couple, we could set that up. And
maybe for those of you who are not going through this process, but have friends or family who are, hopefully this enlighten you in terms of how you can have those conversations with those individuals around you that you love who are, or how you can be more compassionate or empathetic in their process.
Yeah, so share it, all that. So thank you so much. And we appreciate you tuning in to this episode of Our Life, Our Journey, and Our Truth. I'm Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Peace out.